As we were this weekend with our son Anderson as he was with the Civil Air Patrol, during their keynote speech, during the graduation ceremony, some things were said that caused me to start to take notes, because I thought, well, you know what, that'll preach. And these are some good thoughts that can carry over, and I shouldn't be amazed by it, but it often strikes me how the wisdom that the world professes and the things that we find that are just those truths that are just unget-overable, to coin a phrase, those truths that are just undeniable. Often, well, every time, you can trace them back and you can find that God said it first, and that the Scriptures said it first, and mankind, through reason of use and learning, has understood that these things work and these things are truthful. And one of the things that we can find in the Scriptures that we can talk about here this evening is that each and every one of us needs a good helper, a good person to go along with us in the battle that we're in when we go out into the world. Let's go over to Galatians for just a moment, and we'll read Galatians 6, the first two verses. There in Galatians 6 at verse 1 it says, "Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself." And it goes on to speak about examining yourself and so on. Continue to read there. I know that this is a very familiar passage to all of us, but the takeaway for right now is that we need one another. If we look around us, and as we interact with each other throughout the week, and as we come together on the first day of the week and on Thursday night for midweek Bible study, if we see that one of the brethren is involved in something, or is taken down by something, or is just having a bad week, it is up to us to be a good wingman, so to speak, to be one that is there when trouble arises. Be the one that is there to help and to watch and to be vigilant for our brother or sister. And this concept carries over well into many aspects of life, but God said it first. He gave, when you think about, in going back to the beginning as we did this morning, going back to Genesis, and realize that after God had created man, after he had created Adam, he said it's not good that man should be alone. Let's create a helper for him, comparable to him. And that's exactly what he did, because man needed a helper. And if you've been alive on this earth for any length of time, you realize how you need a helper from time to time. Even as independent as we might try to think that we are, we need a helper from time to time. A good wingman, if we're going to use that term, a good helper, a good wingman that is going to go with you in this spiritual battle that is called physical life here on this earth, is also self-disciplined. And that's something that each and every one of us should try to do, to be self-disciplined, not only for ourselves, but for others. When we come together here like we are this evening, we're not just coming together for our own edification, but together we build each other up. And we need to be self-disciplined ourselves so that we can help and be there during the times of need with our brethren. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and at verse 27. It says, "But I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. Paul understood how difficult it was to keep himself in check, realizing where he had the life that he had led previous to his conversion, and realizing that he was a human being just as any of us. He realized that he needed to buffet his body, is what the King James says, and that's the way I remember it. But to force yourself to be disciplined, to force yourself to do the thing that needs to be done. On a very superficial level, one of the things that I have to do is to make sure that on Saturday night I have everything packed in my bag, even if I don't want to, even if I don't feel like it, and my first inkling would be, let's just wait till the morning to do that because I'm tired and I want to go to bed. I make myself put everything together and put it by the door or in the car so that I'm ready to go on Sunday morning. It takes a little bit of discipline to do that. It takes some discipline to actually set your alarm and then make sure you get up in the morning when there's some place to be, especially work, but also on Sunday morning when it's time to assemble with the saints. A good wingman is disciplined enough to realize that this is important. I need to be there not only because I'm going to get something out of it, but because I can offer some help and some support to the brethren as well. And not only that, but as I grow stronger and I learn more and I study more and I interact with others, I need to have that self-discipline, because let's face it, sometimes it's not easy to do the things that we're called to do as Christians. Sometimes we have to sacrifice of our time when we perhaps would really rather be doing something else, at least at our first blush. But when we discipline ourselves to study and to put the Lord first, we find that our will starts to mesh with the Lord, and that self-discipline becomes a little bit easier. It becomes easier because we aren't doing it ourselves. We're allowing the Lord and His Word to discipline us and to put us in the right place. A good wingman, a good helper, a good friend, a good brother or sister in Christ has concern for others. And that plays not only for people outside the church, but right here within the assembly of the saints, we should have concern for one another. We should be concerned about how one another are doing and the difficulties that come with this life. We should be concerned with those things and to care about one another. It is so easy to fall victim to the thinking of this world, to where you just care about yourself. Just think about yourself and don't worry about the person next to you. But a good wingman is going to have that concern for others. Philippians 2, verse 4 says, "Let each of you look out not only for his own interests, but also for the interests of others." In verse 5, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men." Christ is the ultimate example of one who had concern for others. He was willing to do the will of the Father because he understood what was at stake. He understood what had to be done, and he did it. And as we often use him as an example, as of course he is the ultimate example, we need to emulate that in our lives. Let's go over to Romans chapter 12 for just a moment. Romans chapter 12 at verse 10 says, "Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor giving preference to one another, not lagging in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord." Now that's just at the cornerstone of what we must do, as we are each other's wingman, as we go through life and we we go through the difficulties and the trials, we need to be those that are kind. As verse 9 says, let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. In verse 10 there, be kindly affectionate with brotherly love. We might not, as we mentioned it this morning, we might not agree on all points. We might not agree on all things, aspects of life. We don't have the luxury of disagreeing with the Scriptures. The Scriptures we agree on not because we have to agree with each other, but because God said it. But where it comes to other things, like for instance, here in a little while we'll be getting new carpet, and as we asked the brethren as we were getting ready to do that, what colors you like, we might not have picked the one that you like, but that's something that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, in the scheme of what the Lord has designed for His church. That's just one of those superficial things. But our concern for one another will supersede those sorts of trivial things. And I expect nothing different from the brother, and I just say that as a superficial example. But a good wingman has concern for one another and allows and bears with one another when perhaps as human beings we disappoint one another. When we think that, I would think that they would have done that better, or I think that they could have been there at this time and they weren't. To cut them some slack and be those that love one another and be a good wingman and be there for them, even if they fell short with you. You'll never grow as a group and as a group working in the same manner towards the same purpose. You'll never grow unless we keep stepping up to the plate. So a good wingman has concern for others. A good wingman is also vigilant, and even over the little things. There are so many things that pop up in the religious world, and we might think, that doesn't really matter. That's just a small thing. But we need to be those that also are concerned with even those little things. 1 Peter 5 at verse 8 reminds us to be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. As we realize that Satan is prowling around like a lion, prowling around seeing who he may devour, we have to be careful about those little things. If you're in battle and it's your job to watch the farthest back area of the perimeter of the base that you're on, and perhaps there's a gate there, and you think, no one's ever attacked from this direction. I think I can take a nap. I think that would, that probably wouldn't go over very well with your superiors. But God forbid that the attack would happen during that time when you were asleep, even though you thought it was a little thing, and you thought that perhaps the plan was silly. But it's not our job as Christians to second guess the Lord's plan for His church, the Lord's plan for the worship that we are to give to Him on the first day of the week. It's our job to do those things and to be the best that we can at it, and to help each other and lift each other up. If we go back again, let's go back to 1 Corinthians, and this time 1 Corinthians 5 at verse 6 reminds us that a little leaven leavens the whole lump. 1 Corinthians 5 verse did I do that wrong? 1 Corinthians 5 at verse 6. Did I get that? Oh yeah, there it is. I was reading the wrong one. Your glorying is not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens the whole lump. And realizing, that example paints a picture in our minds. That example, if we have ever baked anything, we understand what the leavening does, and it causes something that is flattened without volume to puff up and become bigger. And we understand that concept. And while we are human beings, and sometimes we fall short, if we allow those little things that perhaps we think, well, that's really not a big deal. So I understand that I'm supposed to be at services and so on, but I'll let it go this time. We understand that could very well turn into leaven that may grow bigger than we ever expected. And I know it's a difficult thing, as we go through life. Even over the past couple of weeks, my family and I have had some interesting conversations with those that when we told them that the boys were at different camps this week, and when we didn't budge on the idea that they had to be in services on Sunday morning, they worked through that with us, but there was some pushback. There were people that didn't understand that. And while it may be easy enough to say, well, it's okay, that's only 1 week, whenever it's possible, we need to do whatever we can to make sure that we are following the will of the Lord. There are times when it's going to be impossible. There are times where you'll find yourself in a situation and it's just not going to be possible. And the Lord understands those things, but He looks at our heart, and He wants to know that, are we being vigilant? Are we being sober-minded and thinking about all of the things that He's commanded us to do and doing the best that we can? And we know that within our own hearts too. If we're not, then the Word will convict us if we listen. And we'll understand that I'm not doing the best and I could do better. And that's the time where you lean on the brethren. And you start making things right. And you lean on the brethren, and together we grow stronger in those ways. And I'm certain, as I have found over the years with the brethren, wherever I've been, that they always rise to the occasion, and they always are willing to help wherever possible. And that's no different here. And I'm thankful for each and every one of you every day for that. And also thinking about being a good wingman knows the mission. It's often the case that sometimes we get into the habit of, as I mentioned this morning, checking the boxes. Okay, I've done that. It's Sunday. I got up. I went to Bible study. I went to worship. I did all of the acts of worship that are commanded. And, I'm back here for a Sunday evening service, and I've checked all those boxes. But there's more to it than that. Hosea 4 verse 6, at the beginning of that verse reminds us, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. That has happened over and over again through the history of God's people. If you look back through the scriptures and remember the times that God's people refused to know His word, and yet they were destroyed in some way, or at least set back. Ultimately in the end, if we don't have the knowledge that the Lord has desired for us to have, and we can't make the decisions that He has desired that we do, then ultimately, we would be one of those lost because of our lack of knowledge. And we need to do that for ourselves, but also for our brethren. How are you going to watch out for your brother or sister? How are you going to make sure that they're on the straight and narrow path as well? How are you going to know when something is detrimental to the faith if you don't know the Word yourself? We have to know the mission. One of the things that I'm certain those of you that have been in military service and from my observations from the people that I know that have been and from the things that I saw even yet this last week with my son Anderson in this training camp, was that they needed to know certain things, and it was expected of them, and they and they made that part of their job. And any of you that have been on a mission like that know that that's the case, and we should treat the Scriptures and our job as Christians the same way, with the same seriousness, that we, in order to be a good servant of the Lord and a good helper to those around us within the faith, that we are also going to make it our purpose to know the mission. To know the mission so that we can all make it to heaven after this life is over, so that we can be sure that our children are prepared for such things. Not so much concerned that they're, while it's important that they know the things that they need to know in this physical world and go to school and learn the things to become productive citizens in society, what is that worth if they lose their soul? What is that worth if they gain every sports trophy known to man, yet they don't know who Jesus is? Yet they don't know what the plan is that Jesus set forth to save their soul. We need to be good wingmen. We need to be those that watch out for one another. We need to be those that are self-disciplined together and as individuals. And that we have concern for others, for one another, and for people around us that truly need the gospel. We need to be those that are vigilant, and even to the point of making certain that we don't overlook the quote-unquote little things. And we need to know the mission. Today, if you're sitting here and you're outside of Christ, I invite you to put on Christ in baptism. The waters are ready behind us. If you're catching this lesson, as it will probably be uploaded to YouTube later on, if you're catching this lesson and you'd like to study, then by all means, reach out to us. If you're sitting here today and you found that perhaps you've failed to be a good helper to those around you, and you'd like to ask for the prayers of the saints that you become stronger as you go through life, then we stand ready to do that. That's one of the things that we've been talking about. I bring it up often because I think it's so important that as a family in Christ, that we are able and willing to do such a thing as to tell the others when we're having a problem, an issue, so that we can be helped, so that we can be prayed for, so that we can have our wingmen, if you will, watch out for us, that we might all be successful in the Lord's kingdom. So whatever your need may be, whether it be baptism or to ask for the prayers of the saints, please let your need be known as we stand and sing.